I've been talking about individualism for a while now, and I want to touch on some topics that are being discussed in our real life, in contemporary lives, and I want to actually apply those to what I've my principle to what is happening right now in real life. So I want to talk about Palestine, and the the events happening in the world right now. Being ignorant of it is actually inexcusable. You can't actually excuse it. I mean, it is stupid at this point to actually see the world and not actually really think of digging deep to actually find out the truth. People mistake ignorantly, right? Nigerians especially, which actually infuriates me a lot, the cause of the Palestinians to a jihadist cause. They think this is about Islam. But they do not understand it is not. Palestinians are religious, they are Muslims, right? But I think if you spend 70 years, almost 80 years of your life in a refugee camp, you will be forced to turn to religion. You might be forced to turn to religion. And I bet that if you actually went to Texas and actually took the lands from the Christian Texans, and if they were to fight you, I'm very sure they would be actually fighting you in the name of Christ. And while actually throwing Molotov cocktails at you, they'll be shouting the name of Christ, the name of God, in the name of God, right? Even when they would declare make the Declaration of Independence, they have to actually cite the Creator, right? So anyone will turn to religion when you go to persecution, and basically that is what you have. So before I go into what happened, I want to talk about human impetus. Because America is an individualistic country, not a rational country. It is not a reasonable country. It's not a country kind of reason. You can't actually see it is their foreign policy is devoid of reason, because that is where it should be most pronounced if you are not actually dealing with a tribal sentiment under one constitution, right? That is where it should be more pronounced. But America lacks reason. America lacks rationality. It lacks common sense. So I will try to explain things, what is going in Palestine, with something that was written by the eminent scholar John Locke of the West, right? I think John Locke is British, and he was trying to actually ground property rights on something. Like he was working at a time when the world was religious, but we wanted to grant that said something that was religious. That is what smart people do, so that their work will be eternal. They try to avoid temporary ideas. Religion is temporary. So, he claimed wrongly that the default state of nature is that there are no societies, that everyone are individualistic. I think there are societies. I think it's wrong. There is a society. But John Locke said people do not normally behave, and they could actually take what belongs to others. And we create government. Because we create government to submit individual liberty for the sake of security. That is what John Locke actually said. He said, why do we create government? He said it is because humans can't be trusted. Or he said, although our actions should be proportionate to the level of transgression, but he said it is human nature to escalate retaliatory violence and leading to a state of war, leading to anarchy, because the government have failed to do its job. And that's why we create government. Once there is no government, that it is human nature to actually escalate retaliatory violence, resulting in a state of war. So basically, that is basically what happened in Palestine. Now we have Palestinians, descendant of Canaanites and the Levant, because people talk about the Bible. The Bible is not an historical document, but there are some things that you can actually look at the context. There's a way you can actually look at the context of the Bible to actually understand and actually discuss things with people. You can look at the Bible and actually see context. The thing is, when you actually discuss it, they will tell you that the Ashkenazi Jews from Europe are descendants of ancient Israelite that was sent out when the temple actually fell. So the temple actually fell more than about 2,000 years ago. But let us continue. The Palestinians, when you read the Bible, you see that to create the Israeli kingdom at the time, you see there were actually other people in the region that the Jews actually conquered. The Jews of the time, there were people that the Jews actually conquered. It means they had neighbors that they were actually living, the Levant, the Canaanites. You see? The Ashkenazi Jews in Europe that actually came to colonize Palestine, and they didn't lie about it. They said they were coming to colonize Palestine. Right? And because they knew they didn't belong, and they said terrorism was there too. They were not hiding it at the time. It is not that they're actually cosplaying to be good people that you think that they are actually good people, to convince you. But they knew terrorism was their weapon. They knew they were coming to colonize Palestine. To some degree, there are some DNA of some Levant in them, but they are not alone. Even Italians actually have DNAs of Levant. They call it the Ashkenazi DNA, right? They are mostly Europeans. They look European. They've been out of the continent, out of the region for almost 2,000 years. Although some of them they converted to Islam, and life went on. But then there were some Europeans, Polish, Germans, that came and said, since they couldn't actually find a place to actually live because they were always kicking them out, for some reason, more than 100 people, 100 cultures actually kicked the Jews out. They feel like they've done something wrong, and then so let's kick them out. Every single place they go to, they kick them out. But they needed a place. They needed a place to come to be racist in peace. So they took Palestine with the help of Harry Truman, the Britain, and the United Nations, the government of the day that I was talking about, the government of the day that should have actually mediated peace, that should have actually protected. The government exists to protect property rights, individual rights. The government took their lands, and they didn't. At the time, the Palestinians knew that are actually indigenous to the place. They've been at the place for thousands of years. Their DNA is connected to the Levant and Canaanites. They are the most indigenous, biologically indigenous to the region. The most, not the people that came from Europe. They came and actually said they knew that the Zionists, they call it Zionists. I don't believe in that ideology. It is Judaism that is doing this, because Jews believe, their culture believes, it tells them that they are actually genetically and biologically and spiritually chosen a group of people, right? A chosen group of people above everyone else, and that is just what their claim is. So the Palestinians were not consulted when their land would be divided, and that was just a fact. They broke the land into two, and they gave the Palestinians some of their land. But you see, the Palestinians always knew that the Jews wanted all the land.
Among the Jews, the Zionists particularly, who were against anything that was to be done if they couldn't have the whole of Palestine and everything handed to them on a silver plate so they wouldn't have to do anything. It couldn't be done. We had to take it in small doses. You can't move 5 or 6 million people out of a country and fill it up with 5 or 6 million more and expect both sets of them to be pleased. We had all sorts of objections to everything that was done. A lot of Jewish people against me because they wanted the whole of Palestine.
See? So they went to war with the Arab coalition, and the United Nations, the Britain, America joined the Jews to take other people's land. Even when the land were fought, even after the war was over, they raped, pillaged, and they took more lands away from the Palestinians. They raped them, and they were even proud to say it.
הרגת, אז עשית דבר טוב. הייתי מוכן להרוג. אני אספר לה שאני הייתי רוצח. עד היום רק שהייתה אקדח, אתה הרג את כולם. יאללה, עפו אותם כמוהו. בזמן קרב, אם מישהו הרים ידיים, משהו כזה, לא לקחתי שבויים.
כמה אתה חושב אנשים הרגת ככה?
לא ספרתי. אני לא יכול לדעת בחיי.
הוא תפס אישה, חתיכה צעירה, נכנס לבית אחד, הכין חדר מיטות, עם מיטל, ברטל זיין אותה.
הילדה חזרה סמרטוטיה.
אחד אנס שם איזה ילדה בת 16, משהו כזה. אתה מבין? אבל זה מכוער מאוד. היה לנו בחור אחד, הוא נפטר, הוא היה פרא אדם. הוא לקח פשוט מאוד ורצח אותם בתוך המכלאות. חוטי ברזל כאלה, עגולים כאלה, אספו כל הגברים. הם יושבים שם, כולם, על הרצפה. ובא מישהו ולוקח תת מקלע ומתחיל זה, מחליף מחסנית, שלקחו את הלוויורים ורדפו אחרי חבר'ה ושרפו אותם. זה היה משהו זוועתי, וזה אסור לספר, אני לא אדבר על זה. מלחמה זה מלחמה.
They are even still proud to say it today, that they were raped, they destroyed their crops, they poisoned their wells. They poisoned, you know, they will say it is an ancient anti-Semitic trope to actually say Jews poisoned the wells. But they did this time. And they don't even lie about it, that they poisoned their wells, they still do it today. So that Palestinians don't actually have any water. Bunch of Europeans came from Europe and they are doing this. And every time they fight, they lose more land. And even when after the Oslo Accord to actually acknowledge, for the Palestinians actually acknowledge the existence of Israel, Israel has still been stealing more land. And it hasn't just been stealing land from Palestine, it has been stealing land from Syria, it has been stealing land from Lebanon. They stole the Golan Heights. If it was you, and you've been enjoying the shifting from villages to villages, someone came from Europe and they will be stealing your land, you welcome them into your house because they said they had nowhere else to go. And they just took your home. Would you fight?
Look, I once was asked some 30 years ago what I have been doing if I were a Palestinian. And 30 years ago, I was new enough in politics to tell the truth that if I were born Palestinian, I probably would have joined one of the terror organizations.
Would you fight? And this is America always at the behind terrorism, behind the displacement of people, behind evil, and America has been supporting them since then because it happened to the Muslims. Many people would say they deserve this. In fact, they will tell you that they bought the land, and since they paid for it, it now belongs to them, and they can actually push them out. You see, the Jews actually knew they didn't have the numbers. The Canadians knew they didn't have the numbers, so they started importing people that were culturally Jews, Ethiopian Jews, Algerians from Tunisia, from Iran, from Iraq, people that are just culturally Jews that they do not even belong to the land of Palestine, and they use that to swell up their numbers in the country. And they displaced, they stole, they killed, they raped the people that they met there. The descendants of the Canaanite, the descendants of the Levant, even ancient Jews that turned to Muslim, and they've been doing that. Is that right? And it's a supremacist claim. Jews believe they are better than everyone else, and they are. It is Judaism, not Zionism. Judaism, not Zionism. And they will say Palestinians rejoiced when the 9/11 happened. I'm not saying I take delight in the suffering of others, but I understand human impetus, human emotions, which is why I chose to actually do this video, because you have to understand that people think, people behave. People do not actually, humans do not feel like celebrating the goodness of those who destroy their lives.